The Ghost of Yotei drama is heating up. When it comes to the announcements of modern video games being released, in many cases titles can find themselves at the centre of debates from the very first moment gamers lay eyes on them. Speaking of which, no title fits this description better than Ghost of Yotei, the long-awaited yet already controversial follow-up to the excellent Ghost of Tsushima. Keeping in mind that gamers praise the original game so much, then how come there are negative discussions revolving around its sequel months and months before even coming out of the gate? Let's find out. I am Lady Decade, and this is why the Ghost of Yotei controversy is pathetic. Ghost of Tsushima is absolutely beloved by its fans. Celebrated for its stunning visuals and meticulously designed open world, the game successfully captures the beauty of feudal Japan, offering lush landscapes, dynamic weather, and attention to detail in every corner. This game looks truly beautiful, meaning that it is no wonder that players enjoy exploring its diverse environments so much. This instant classic, with its dense forests and tranquil villages, offers the perfect form of escapism, making it the perfect game to play while winding down, thanks to the fact that it's immersive enough to make players feel like they're actually living in a samurai epic. Pair all of this with a great combat system that masterfully blends traditional samurai swordsplay with stealth mechanics. The title offers up the AAA experience, but done right, mixing the perfect level of pick up and play with engagement. Speaking of the mechanics, they are even woven into the story itself, as players are given the choice to fight honorably or adopt more unconventional, stealthy tactics as the Ghost. This works wonderfully as the tale follows Jin Sakai, a samurai who struggles between upholding the samurai code and using stealthier, more ruthless methods to save his people from the Mongol invasion. It champions themes of honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. Perfect things to contemplate as you explain to someone else that you're single by choice, and not because you spend too much time watching YouTube videos about the latest gaming dramas. Whether you are single or in a relationship, you need to try out Ghost of Tsushima. Fortunately, I can get you the director's cut of the game for a price that is 33% cheaper than on Steam, as well as huge discounts on Space Marine 2, Black Myth Wukong, and most of the greatest games that have seen release recently. Buy these and get up to 90% off thousands of AAA, indie, modern, and retro titles simply by using my affiliate link via the pinned comments. Happy shopping. While on the subject of Tsushima, you might be wondering why I'm talking about it so much in a video that is supposed to be about the drama surrounding Ghost of Yotei. So my answer to that is that context is everything, and in order to understand the current drama around the upcoming release, we first have to understand the drama that emerged around its predecessor, as all of the negativity that is circling today partially exists due to what happened with Tsushima previously. So with that said, let's jump into covering Tsushima's spicy past. Ghost of Tsushima was developed by Sucker Punch Productions and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, seeing release in the apocalyptic summer of 2020. While I've already spoken passionately about what made this game special, a further reason it stood out was for its cultural immersion. Ghost of Tsushima is thoroughly steeped in Japanese history and tradition, from its architecture to its reverence for nature and honor. Even the game's Kurosawa mode, which adds a black and white grainy filter, pays homage to classic samurai films, further enhancing the authenticity of the experience. If you do not keep up with your gaming current affairs though, what may surprise you is that despite being set in Japan and featuring Japanese themes, the entire game was developed in the West. And bearing in mind that 2020 by this point was the hottest year so far for the culture wars, you can probably imagine that most game journalists were not at all happy about this. One of the main debates concerned whether a Western studio like Sucker Punch could authentically portray Japanese culture. While the game was generally well received in Japan, some Western critics raised concerns about potential cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation, an American term that, whenever I hear it uttered by someone in a negative context, instantly makes me see them as a gatekeeper and complete idiot. Complaints about cultural appropriation are completely overblown and frankly ridiculous. Human history has always been about cultures borrowing from one another, exchanging ideas, traditions, and innovations. After all, there is only one race, the human race. And as someone with mixed heritage, I would not even exist if two people didn't decide to come together from different cultural backgrounds. It's this blending of cultures that has led to some of the most beautiful aspects of society: food, music, fashion, and even language. And most importantly of all, me. Cultural appropriation is how civilization has grown and flourished. To suggest that we need to put up walls around cultural elements as if they belong exclusively to one group is truly absurd. Cultures aren't static. They evolve and blend together naturally. Trying to control or limit how people engage with or adopt different cultural influences is not only unrealistic but also stifles the progress we've made as a global society. No matter how many students from California try to convince you that Super Mario wearing a sombrero is offensive. What really bothers me about this line of thinking is the attempt to police artistic expression. Creativity thrives on inspiration, and that inspiration can and should come from anywhere. Telling people they can't use certain elements in their art or personal style because it doesn't belong to them is not just an attack on freedom of expression, but an attack on Western values themselves. In Ghost of Tsushima's case, journalists would question whether a non-Japanese team could faithfully represent Japanese history and culture, with some likening it to what they deem as problematic depictions seen in Hollywood in the past. The game also drew criticism for blending various elements of Japanese history and samurai mythology, some of which were not entirely accurate to the period. Ironically, really, as from what I can tell, a lot of the same publications who criticised Tsushima for this in the past are the same people defending attacks against Assassin's Creed Shadows, a game that, unlike Tsushima, has upset and offended a lot of Japanese people. It's baffling to me how many Western journalists were outraged by the portrayal of the Mongols in this game. Some argued that the depiction was overly stereotypical, painting them as savage and faceless with little nuance, especially when contrasted with the noble portrayal of the samurai. Really? This is what they're upset about. The same crowd that has no shortage of harsh words for the British Empire and Western imperialism suddenly has a problem when the Mongol Empire is portrayed as the villain in a video game. I thought we'd all agreed that imperialism was bad, or is it only bad when white people do it? The Mongol Empire under Kublai Khan engaged in violent campaigns for conquest abroad throughout China, Korea and Southeast Asia, spreading brutality everywhere they went. Yet game journalists wanted them represented more sympathetically. The inconsistency is staggering. Despite all of this negativity around identity politics surrounding the game and many game journalists not being particularly enamoured with the gameplay that can be found in this one too, compared to a lot of other games that were released on the market at the time, Ghost of Tsushima would end up becoming a smash hit and would become beloved by its audience for all the reasons we discussed earlier in the video. However, it would also be appreciated for an additional reason. As stated earlier in the video, Ghost of Tsushima came out in the summer of 2020, the year of the COVID-19 lockdown, the #MeToo movement, the Black Lives Matter protests, and so much more. With a lot of people stuck at home watching all the madness unfold, many would crave normality or even experience nostalgia, daydreaming about the simpler world before a Chinese virus had sent the world spiralling into chaos. In contrast to The Last of Us 2, which was packed to the brim with modern Western political messaging, Ghost of Tsushima, on the other hand, was a game that was free from tackling the current Western social issues. So many would latch onto it as their favourite game of the year. Ghost of Tsushima was perceived as a return to traditional immersive storytelling rather than contemporary social issues. For many, the game was seen as a rejection of what they perceive as an overemphasis on modern identity politics in media, focusing instead on a narrative deeply rooted in another culture, rather than on what everyone else was fixated on at the time. Additionally, Ghost of Tsushima was noted for its predominantly Japanese cast, set within the context of medieval Japan, without the inclusion representation of characters or themes that some might perceive as pandering to contemporary ideas about diversity. In premise, it was simple, straightforward, and seen as a breath of fresh air, free from contemporary agendas. So, bearing this in mind, 4 years down the line, what is the current conversation around its sequel? On the 24th of September 2024, during Sony's State of Play event, Ghost of Yotei was announced. The long-awaited sequel to Ghost of Tsushima set in the region surrounding Mount Yotei, a volcano located in what is now Hokkaido, Japan. In the trailer, a beautiful black and white cinematic sequence would play, revealing a title set in 1603, a time period 400 years after the story of Ghost of Tsushima takes place. After transitioning to colour, we are then introduced to a brand new masked protagonist who we get to witness gallivanting around the world. But right at the end, a not so surprising turn of events would take place. The trailer revealed that our previous series protagonist is being replaced with a woman. In all fairness, in comparison to the perceived ugly design of Kay Vess in Star Wars Outlaws, reaction to this has been relatively mild so far. After all, writing off a game as guaranteed to be poor based on the fact that it will star a woman alone would be unhinged behaviour. Despite this, some have felt though that this change is a concerning one, mostly due to Sony Entertainment's track record in recent years of making a lot of what many perceive to be terrible, politically motivated decisions based around the agenda of including an advanced level of representation in every title they produce. Bearing in mind that Tsushima is a game that features more traditional storytelling set in a different time, the huge worry is that in a fashion typical of the brand, Sony is going to inject modern social issues into a game where many feel they will be distracting and unwelcome. Essentially, some traditionalists see the changing of the star character from a male to a female as what progressives would refer to as a dog whistle, a signalling that the game is going in a so-called more modern direction in line with the Sony PlayStation brand's current corporate value set. One of the most outspoken creators of influence online who has been critical of this has been YouTuber Endymion. Shortly after the game was announced, he would tweet on X that Ghost of Tsushima sequel stars a Japanese woman samurai warrior because, of course, it does. They can't help themselves until every franchise that was built on masculinity is replaced by women. Ghost of Yotei is, hopefully, a smaller spin-off game, but if this is the true sequel and this is the new main character over Jin Sakai, f*** that. So sick of the forced girl boss narrative, man. Now, when we take into account that this trend seems so cliche and so overdone across all forms of modern media, it's very easy to see why he would come to such a hasty conclusion. If you head over to Sony Interactive Entertainment's website, it clearly outlines that an active push to diversify games based on gender and identity is continuously underway. In fact, as highlighted before on this channel, the way the website reads, this seems a higher priority for the company than either providing value or delivering the best experience for customers. In this push against tradition, the website states, diversifying the gaming industry is one of our most important goals. Sony Interactive is committed to preparing and nurturing underrepresented talent for careers in the gaming industry. With the voice actress who has been chosen to voice the character who is replacing Jin Sakai reflecting Sony's goal of employing people who are largely different from the average player. Woman and new protagonist Atsu is set to be voiced by Erika Ishii, an individual who in fact doesn't seem to consider themselves a woman, but instead non-binary, going to the effort of claiming in their X bio that they accept all pronouns. That ParkPlace.com reports that Ishii is a radical trans activist who, through screenshots gathered via X, builds up a picture of a person who is neck-deep in the culture wars with a drastically different worldview compared to the majority of the global population. Videos and tweets can also be found on there of her attacking Hogwarts Legacy and saying trans exclusionary radical feminists. The only point I'm trying to make is that politically she is very, very vocal about her differing views, with few attributes suggesting that she values tradition. Considering that we already know that she is working on the Yotei project, it builds on the suspicion that this is going to be yet another Sony title that positions modern issues in a historical narrative. Right-leaning source That Park Place believes that in Sony's current position and the way they now hire staff, it would be challenging for them to make a game without it including progressive messaging and undertones, adding that not only does the company seemingly have discriminatory hiring policies based on skin color and sex, but it also makes it clear it is injecting woke messaging into its games. Backing this point up by adding that it states on Sony's website that we are also committed to highlighting diversity in products. We feature curated collection on PlayStation Store around themes such as amazing heroines, LGBTQIA+ characters, and accessibility-friendly titles. They add that they consider it unlikely that creators will be able to produce a story without inserting their values, whether it be conscious or not, using The Lord of the Rings as an example of this. Quoting Tolkien, they add, "The Lord of the Rings is, of course, a fundamentally religious and Catholic work, unconsciously so at first, but consciously in the revision. That is why I have not put in or have cut out practically all references to anything like religion, to cults or practices in the imaginary world, for the religious element is absorbed into the story and the symbolism." However, that is very clumsily put and sounds more self-important than I feel. For, as a matter of fact, I have consciously planned very little and should chiefly be grateful for having been brought up since I was 8 in a faith that has nourished me and taught me all the little that I know and that I owe to my mother, who clung to her conversion and died young, largely through the hardships of poverty. They conclude that they assume Sony staff will consciously attempt to inject their own philosophies and values into a series that was first successful, largely based on its focus on masculinity and tradition. As this discussion has been emerging, it has caught the attention of former Sony chairman Sean Layden. Responding to a tweet on X criticising Endymion's tweet that we mentioned earlier, Layden himself would tweet, "1. It's a game, an entertainment, a story a team of creators believes in. They want to make this. 2. It's a game. If you don't like it, don't buy it. In fact, why not make the game you want yourself?" Oh, Sean, you poor thing. What a profound grasp of the obvious. It's a game. If you don't like it, don't buy it. Groundbreaking stuff. It's almost as if you've completely forgotten that the entire industry hinges on consumer feedback, whether positive or negative. But sure, just tell people to ignore a $400 million catastrophe like Concord, because clearly telling people not to buy things works wonders for Sony's bottom line, right? That was an absolute masterclass in market research, wasn't it? And the cherry on top, why not make the game you want yourself? Genius advice, truly, because, you know, we all have the luxury of multi-million-dollar budgets and development teams at our disposal. Who needs professional game designers when every random critic can just whip up a AAA title from their living room? Bravo, Sean. Bravo. What a dumb rebuke, showcasing how out of touch some of these people can be, because really, another Concord disaster is all Sony needs at present. The audacity of these people. Holding the failures of Concord in mind and many other AAA blunders that have occurred recently, one thing is clear. Publishers need to start listening to gamers more, whether they are comfortable with the feedback or not. That's the only way these companies are going to begin churning out the money again they desire. While at this point it's impossible to write off the potential of Yotei, looking at Sony's track record and current corporate policy making, I can fully understand why some consumers are so worried about the development of this game. There are certainly red flags popping up that illustrate that Yotei is going to end up a very different game to the beloved title that came before it. Don't forget you can get a huge discount on Ghost of Tsushima and thousands of other modern AAA and indie and retro games simply by using the affiliate links via the pinned comment, or if you want to support what I do in a more personal way, please consider backing this channel over on Patreon.